As we already know that the Constitution of India has provided for a federal system of government, that is, having separate system of administration operating at both the union as well as at its federating unit level, more popularly known as the states. The machinery of the state government, or in other words we can say the Constitution has provisions for governance of both. Just like the union government, the state government too has been designed on a parliamentary model. The head of the state is none other than the governor. He is the constitutional head of the state, just like we have the president for the whole of India. But the real executive of the state, or the real head of the government, happens to be the chief minister, whose role is almost similar with that of the Prime Minister of India. There is also a council of ministers in the state legislature, just like we have one in our parliament. So we see the state government is more or less a true copy of the union government with a minor deviation. That is, the state government has to function within the jurisdiction of the state. This helps the state government to draw inspiration and examples from the union government, or rather from the working of the union government in almost every field of its activity. The governor is the constitutional head of the state. More specifically, we can say that at the executive power of the state is the governor, just like we have the president at the executive power of the union. The executive power not only rests with the governor, but all the executive actions of the state are taken out by his name. So, we find that Article 153 of the Constitution clearly stating that a governor has to be appointed for each of the state. But an amendment in the year 1956, however, had made it clear that a governor can be appointed for more than 2 states. There are instances where we find that the governor of Assam being appointed as a governor of Meghalaya as well. Similarly, the states of Manipur, Tripura and Nagaland being placed under another governor. How significant is the post of the governor? Scholars share diverse opinion so far as the significance of the post of the governor is concerned. Scholars like J.C. Johari was of the opinion that formally a governor is the constitutional head of the state, but in real terms he happens to be a mere representative of the union government. Scholars like M.V. Piley, however, argued that the governor plays a twofold role. That is, he is the constitutional head of the state and also he acts as a link between the union and the state government. Again, there are scholars like S. Chatterjee and Sivak who believed that the post of the governor has the potentiality of becoming one of the crucial power men in the state administration. So we see that all these diverse opinions suggest that the post of the governor not only a significant one, but at the same time it happens to be a controversial one as well. Now let us see how the governor is appointed in India. In India, the governor is not elected directly by the people, but rather he is nominated and appointed by the president. The governor holds office at the pleasure of the president. So now a question creeps in our mind that why the governor in India is not elected but selected. To fetch an answer to this question, we will have to move or we will have to trace back to the political history of a time when the constitution was being formed. The question not only bothered us, but it seemed to have bothered even the framers of the Constitution. There was diverse opinion amongst the members of the Constituent Assembly with regard to the procedure for the appointment of the governor. Broadly speaking, or generally, there were 4 proposals which have been put forth and discussed in a great detail in the Constituent Assembly. What are these 4 proposals? The first proposal argued of electing the governor directly by the people. In fact, this particular proposal had actually followed the footsteps of the United States of America. The second proposal argued that the governor to be elected by the members of the state legislature. The third proposal, however, deviated a bit from the above two and suggested that a governor to be nominated by the president from amongst the candidates to be elected or nominated by the members of the state legislature. Finally, there was the last proposal which argued in favor of nomination of the governor by the president alone. We will be taking up these 4 proposals one after the other and see how logically it helps us to understand that the final proposals being accepted while discarding the other 3. Let us get back to the first proposal. Article 131 of the draft constitution suggests that the people of the state who are having the right to vote in the general election will also have the right to cast their vote and elect the governor in the state. However, this particular proposal was discarded on the ground that if the governor is being elected, then there is a possibility that he might regard himself as a real representative of the state. So, he might not act simply as a constitutional head of the state. Rather, he would like to act as a real executive of the state. This might create a conflict between the Council of Ministers, who are also directly elected by the people, and the governor on the other hand. The second argument was put forward by Mr. H.V. Kamath. According to him, the governor, if directly elected by the people, he will be do so by the entire population of the state. So there is a possibility that he might regard himself to be superior compared to the chief minister who will be elected only from a particular constituency. Such a conflicting situation which might arise between the chief minister and the governor, perhaps not very desirable for a smooth functioning of the state administration. Mr. Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer suggested that such a conflicting situation will hamper the constitutional structure of the state, since the constitutional structure to a great extent depends on the harmony between the legislature and the executive, and also between the members of the executive and the formal head of the executive. The third argument was put forward by none other than Pandit Nehru. According to him, a governor should be a person who will not be too actively involved into politics. He will be a person of eminence in some walks of life. So, he even believed that through the post of the governor, even the leaders of the minority communities could be represented in the state administration. Fourthly, it was argued that the criteria or the procedure of a direct election of the governor perhaps doesn't fit in well with the parliamentary system of government. Why? Because in a parliamentary system, we are used to see a constitutional head and a real head. Perhaps the very idea of direct election of the governor will not go well with such a system. Finally, it was argued by the scholars that, and also shared by the members of the Constituent Assembly, that if the governor is being elected, then the cost of election would perhaps be more compared to the powers which is being vested upon him by the Constitution. In fact, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar went to the extent of arguing that no person perhaps will be willing to contest the election for the post of a governor compared to the powers which happens to be very nominal and limited in nature. Let us get back to the second proposition, that is, electing the governor by the members of the state legislature. Such a proposal was also discarded on the ground that if the electoral power is being vested with the members of the state legislature, then the post of the governor will be converted simply as a toy in the hands of the political party having a majority in the state legislature. This is so since for his election or for his re-election, the governor has to depend on the electoral support of the members of the state legislature having a majority. So, if it is done in that way, then the governor would not be able to act or to take decision impartially and beyond party politics. So, the ultimate objective of having an impartial administrator in the state administration would thereby turn out to be a futile effort. Let us take up the third proposition. The third proposal argued of nominating the governor by the president from amongst the candidates to be submitted to the president by the members of the state legislature. Now, this proposal too was discarded on the ground that if the president selects not the first but the second or the third or even the last name in the panel submitted to him by the members of the state legislature, then the Council of Ministers of the state might have a grouse against the newly appointed governor, since he is being appointed in preference to the first name. Again, a situation of conflict may arise between the governor on one hand and between the Council of Ministers on the other. There is also another argument which goes against this proposal. In fact, it had been suggested by the scholars that if the procedure of nomination or if the procedure of setting up a panel is being considered, then probably it might encourage and indulge in fractionalism and groupism within a political party. This is so since each of the group within a political party would like to project their own favorite as a probable candidate for the post of the governor. Thirdly, it was argued that if the nomination of the governor out of the panel actually meant the choice of the president was limited or curtailed to a certain extent. So, it was decided that the fourth proposal, that was the nomination of the governor by the president alone, was to be accepted. Now, if there are arguments in favor of nomination, so obviously there would be arguments against nomination as well. It was argued that a nominated governor would not be able to work for the welfare of the state because he would be a foreigner to the state without being able to understand the specific requirement of the citizens residing in a state. Again, the chances of friction between the Council of Ministers and the governor or the chief minister and the governor was expected to be less in a procedure of nomination does not hold good, since such a chances of friction between the chief minister and the governor might exist if the governor and the chief minister belonging to two different political parties. Thirdly, the system of election does not go with the parliamentary system does not reveal the entire truth, since the President of India is himself being elected, though not directly but indirectly. Again, the method of nomination is repugnant to the strict federal structure as we find in the United States of America or that of Australia. Thus, after a long debate, finally it was decided that the governor be appointed for a term of 5 years, and as it would be in best conformity with the lines of a Unitarian federal system. Now let us see what are the qualifications required for a person to become a governor. The first of all, he or she has to be a citizen of India, must have completed the age of 35 years. He cannot be a member of either the parliament or state legislature, and finally cannot hold any office of profit. Apart from these written qualifications, there are two commonly usages which have been developed over the years so far as the appointment of the governor is concerned. The first usage suggests that a governor must not belong to the state where he is being appointed. But we see certain exceptional cases as well. For instance, Mr. H.C. Mukherjee and Mrs. Padmaja Naidu, who had been appointed for the post of governor in West Bengal. In fact, the logic or the logical argument that had been placed by the then Chief Minister of the state, Dr. B.C. Roy, said that the political truth was that, keeping in mind the political situation of that time, it was essential that the appointment of a non-Bengali would perhaps not be taken readily by the people of the state. Secondly, the union government must take the chief minister of the concerned state into consultation before the appointment of the governor. Again, we find an exceptional instances citing in the state of Bihar. It happened at the time of a coalition government led by Mr. Mahamaya Prasad Sinha, who had expressed his resentment against the newly appointed governor. At that very juncture, the Union Home Minister, Mr. Y.V. Chavan, however, in his speech at the Lok Sabha, had made it clear that the Chief Minister has no right to veto the appointment of the governor for his state. Now let us see how the governor can be removed from his office. The normal term of the governor is of 5 years, but it can be terminated earlier only if the President wishes, which is being mentioned in Article 156, Section 1 of the Constitution. Again, he can be terminated by his resignation, which has been mentioned in Article 156, Section 2 of the Constitution. Now, obviously, the grounds upon which a governor may be removed by the President has to be cases of gross delinquency, such as bribery, treachery, corruption charges, or violation of the Constitution. Now let us see how or who were the people who had been preferred to the post of the governor in the past. The scholars argue that the first category happens to be the favored statesman, having long political life, experience of administration, well versed with the problems of politics, like Mr. C. Rajagopalachari, like Mrs. Sarojini Naidu, Mrs. Aruna Asaf Ali, and so on. Again, it has been argued that the seasoned bureaucrats, the retired bureaucrats, were preferred to the post of the governor. Examples include Mr. V.P. Menon and Dharamvira, and so on. Then there are the category of luminaries, eminence in some fields of life, such as having long experience of judicial, academic, or military experiences. Examples include Mr. Fazal Ali, G.S. Pathak, O.P. Malhotra, and so on. Then there are the persons who were rejected from the political scenario, accommodated to the post of the governor. Examples like Bhimsen Sachar, Baliram Bhagat, and so on. Then the final categories happens to be the miscellaneous one. There is actually no such norms known to the scholars which can be, taken as to be the final for the appointment of the governor. There are criteria like accommodating the powerful men of the party who were creating discomfort to the Prime Minister needed to be kept at a safe distance from New Delhi is appointed as the governor of the state. Again, there are persons or the ex-rulers of the princely states having an intimate relation with the Prime Minister of India being selected for the post of the governor. One such instance happens to be the Maharaja of Mysore. Now, there are certain committees and commissions which have been created for reviewing the relationship between the center and the union, has laid down particular recommendations so far as the appointment of the governor is concerned. One such committee happens to be the Administrative Reform Committee, which was set up in the year 1968, suggested that an integrated person having eminence in the field of administration, well established, and eminent public figure should be selected as the governor. Again, the committees or commissions like Raja Mannar Committee, which was set up in the year 1971, argued in favor of a discussion with the chief minister of the concerned state before the appointment of the governor. In doing so, the committee had recommended that perhaps a healthy relationship between the center and the state is likely to be ensured. The committee like Sarkaria Commission, which was established in the year 1983, had laid down 4 criteria for the appointment of the governor. These 4 criteria happens to be: firstly, a governor has to be eminent in some works of life. Secondly, person from outside the state. Thirdly, he should be a detached figure, not intimately connected with local politics of life. And finally, who has not taken too great part into politics. So, the report of the Sarkaria Commission also suggested of not terminating the governor from his normal tenure because until and unless some extraordinary compelling reasons had arisen. So, we see that the post of the governor is not only a serious concern of the scholars, but it is equally significant so far as the relationship between the union and the state government is concerned.